Okay, here we are. This is the greatest story hardly ever told. This is part four, and it is time to meet. We've gone through this remembering thing, the first few parts, to know thyself, and now it's time to get back in touch with who we really are and go from there. These are exciting times. We're waking up. We're coming out of the Dark Age, the Iron Age, the Kali Yuga, and light is pouring back in to the world. You can see these two kind of show us that. And at the bottom there, you can see light coming back into the world. Anybody paying attention to crazy videos like this, consider yourself some of those pixels down there at the bottom. It's not easy for us, and you're doing great work because these are great times. These are amazing times. And let's just put it out there. Um, this is Revelations. The Greek word for revelations is apocalypse. They both mean the same thing, divine disclosure, information about our world of supernatural proportions. Supernatural. Previously unknown stuff, revealing, unveiling. It looks like in a couple weeks this movie's going to be out. Disclosure Day. I don't think that's a uh, coincidence. You can see from the posters that looks like nature is going to be rising back into the focus. And these supernatural proportions, you see that a UFO and maybe some aliens, and it's going to be cool. And in these times, we're going to reacquaint ourselves with who we really are. It's time to meet our soul family, our spirit family, our star family, our multidimensional, eternal, energetic beings family, all spiritual practices, all religions. We're all unified here. We're all in this together, and it's really cool. So I'll expand my story. I'll talk about fellow NDEers, like always, and the teachers around us, and the mainstream clues. I talk a lot about movies and a lot about TV shows. I'm not a TV guy. I'm not a celebrity guy. I'm not a movie guy, really, not that much. Um, but in ancient times, we had things like uh, legends and myths and analogies of different types. Um, Allegories. Thank you. Like the allegory of the cave. These seem like they're simple stories, even back then, but in each of these stories, there was something profound when you're ready to see it. And that's what same thing with our movies today. They seem pretty simple story, but there are a profound information underneath. So it's a mental universe that in itself is a mind blower, and I just heap on top of that with my stuff that's impossible and ridiculous. But um, let's have fun with it. So my story is I'm a was a fireman, and in the 90s, I got really sick on duty, ended up in the hospital. Things didn't go well, and I had an NDE. And I found myself flying through these stars. And I kept saying to myself, how in the world did I forget who I really was? How did I believe I was this dude? Um, Went on and on. I was flying through ecstasy. And to quote the Wise Quotes YouTube channel, um, I was back to what we all come from, luminous particles of joy, navigating a sea of the purest essence of love. To absolutely what's beyond this place. And I was flying through these stars, these orbs. And Brooke tells us that the same thing when she had her NDE in the hospital. Suddenly she could see through all the walls and see the whole hospital. And then these colorful, beautiful, colorful orbs came to her. And Um, she was out of it for several weeks, and they taught her things, and she talks about that. So I was flying along. Everything was absolutely wonderful. I couldn't believe it. I was home, and then everything shifted, and I was in this other place. And it was a clinical place, and there were beings there, and they looked exactly like these guys. I wasn't dancing quite this good, I think, with them, but it kind of gets into the description of the scene is they are very happy. They were giggling a lot. They thought it was hilarious that I didn't remember them, and they were really friendly guys. They were clumsy and goofy and fun-loving, and they loved me. And that's considered like the strangest story in the world, but I don't think it is. I think it's closer to the truth than we realize. And we see these giant heads all over the world, all the continents. The one closest to us here in America is the Olmecs. They're in Mexico, and these giant heads were all throughout their ancient civilization. Nobody knows much about them, but I think those heads were there to remind the citizens that, hey, you're watched over, you're on a journey, and your thoughts and your actions, they mean something. That's what I think those indicators were. And a lot of people call me and they tell me, like Native Americans and Hindus, they all say this same thing that you were with this cheerful king. Our religion, our ways have the same kind of guy. Um, and this ancient god from Greeks, Hades, was described as a cheerful king, usually approaching, chuckling. This is the guy I met, the big guy. I'll talk about him in a second. And there were three smaller beings. A lot of people called them children, but they were playful, they were clumsy, they were mischievous. Um, this repeats through ancient knowledge, ancient myths, it repeats over and over. And I was going down to Hollywood to talk to these guys, give an interview, and my phone rang and it was Adela. She's a house medium. She lives in LA. And she's like, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" And because they pick up on things. Mediums just know things. And I said, "I'm driving to LA. I haven't been down here in years, but," and she's like, "I live in LA and I've been meaning to talk to you. So let's meet." So we met after my interview, we met for lunch. And I was like, "What's up?" And she says, "Well, you're talking about," she said, "I'm paying attention to this NDE craze." This was a few years ago when it really took off. And she says, "You're the only one that's talking about the things that I see, the beings that I see, the places that I go. You're describing them. And you and I just need to connect." And I said, "Okay, that's cool. So who are these guys?" And without hesitation, she goes, "Well, they're, the little small, little short little guys." She's like, "They're from the other place and they're from this place, and their job is to keep order in the afterlife. But when we leave here, we carry a certain quality and essence to ourselves, and we earn a place in the afterlife, a level or something, and their job is to regulate that." Pretty cool. Edgar Casey said something similar that when he'd leave his body, he'd move between these different levels here on Earth and past these little hooded beings. And they were moving between the levels on the stairway that he was on, and they were ordering it. They were controlling who goes where. So I've called them stagehands because I've called our world, a lot of us say the same thing, that it's kind of a movie or a play or a stage. And that in this world, there are stage managers, directors, uh, elites, royal families, etc., that guide the world. They make sure it goes where it's going. We all get our adventure that we signed up for. They keep things uh, on script. And so I call these little guys, I call them stage hands because they're in there doing the dirty work, the hands-on dirty work. And you can see in this painting from the 1700s that there are these winged guys pulling souls off this ascension ladder. The painting's called Ascension. And down below there are these uh, chubby little roundy guys, and they're gathering up souls and taking them places. And people ask me, are these Archons? And um, I don't know, but I think they're part of it. They're not evil. They have a job to do, and it's all about regulating the frequencies, regulating order. And we see this in popular media. The movie Ghost, there's this really scary scene where the bad guys, they get their they get paid back for not being very nice. And when they meet their end, these three little dark hooded guys come out of the shadows and they drag them off to somewhere that none of us want to go. Um, I think in Graham Hancock, in his book Supernatural, he says that our ancestors knew about these things. They could see them. They called them elves and leprechauns and trolls. We just think this is ridiculous now. These are myths. But I think with this revelations, I think this people are going to start seeing them again. And one of my favorite paintings is the one in the upper right there. You can see that the guys are pulled off the ascension ladder because they can't go any higher, and they're collected down below in these big roundy guys that gobble them up. And then in that picture in the top right there, there's a giant head with a big open mouth, and you can see there's a bunch of souls that are stuck in there. They're held in there, and they look kind of miserable. And that says a lot about the afterlife and what we earn by our actions, our thoughts. So I was on the Crystal Cassidy podcast, Soul Pod, and I mentioned that in Pyramid Code, Dr. Carmen Bolter's documentary, you can see that there's these little guys that are in some of the tombs that are etched on the walls, and they're smiling. And I think I thought that was something worth discussing. And she said that she was in um, Hathor Temple in Dendera, Egypt recently, and she knew I was coming on, and she took a picture of this guy that was in that temple, and she said, I'll dig it out and see if we can figure something out. And we kind of went back and forth with the research. And in the old days, the Egyptians had this god, a minor god called Bees, and that meant cat. And he was a protector of children and expecting mothers. I thought that was pretty cool. And going back over the years, I've had a number of women call me and say, the night before my child was born, I had a dream. And, your story's pretty weird. But in my dream, these three little friendly hooded guys came and dropped off my child. These three little guys loved my child, and they dropped him off the night before I gave birth. It's pretty cool. And Bees is known as being a loyal, joyful guardian of children. And in that movie Communion, where you see Christopher Walken in that facility that I remember, there are children in there, and they're being loved and cared for by these hooded guys. Um, pretty cool connection. So they say the stagehands manipulating our thoughts. This is a scene from the Adjustment Bureau where politician gets his thoughts changed and he doesn't realize it. Just a bit of advice, bit of information. This thing is real. We're going to talk about the Archons, and we have our thoughts changed, our mind changed, on things in our life, because the higher you set up this whole fun and games adventure for you so you can learn, and you'll get to a place where there's a major decision. And sometimes our family or our friends will do something that's absolutely unforgivable, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. And just cut them some slack, find the forgiveness, because this is a reality of what's going on, that we're on these adventures and we're moved according to the script. So archons are mental body rascals. They act to create division between positive, powerful forces through ego and fear. We are souls. We are the positive, powerful forces. And they create things in our thoughts. Hard to believe. They create things in our thoughts that move us in other directions. They're not evil, but they're always testing the quality of our thoughts. That is the challenge of this place, to raise our vibration. And when I sleep outside, that picture there at the top, when I sleep outside, I see these winged beings coming down super fast. They're coming down all around the earth. And I think it's this Archon thing. It's a real thing. Nobody really gets it. But in the Matrix, the agents are the Archons. They're trying to keep us in place with their actions, keep us in order. Um, and we have to realize that we are a divine one, that we are the one, and um, go from there and progress out of this place. Another example is in the movie Cloud Atlas. Tom Hanks has this spirit who's just this, is just whispering these evil things in his head all the time, saying, um, you know, better get rid of Halle Berry in this movie. She's up to no good. And, this is a real thing. These things go on. And did the guys I meet, are they Archons? I think they're frequency regulators, and I think Archons are frequency testers, ultimate frequency testers, because it's in our own thoughts. So I think there's some combination there. I'm not sure. And then, I saw the three little guys. Then there was this tall, wispy guy, had the huge smile on his face. He was coming forward, and he looked exactly like this guy in What Dreams May Come. You couldn't get a fix on him. He was spinning, and you'd get a glimpse of his face and spinning and moving, and that is incredibly accurate. I said this before, that reminded me of spinning vortex of water, and that the whirling dervish, the Sufi, I think are recreating this in their rituals. And we talked for a while, then they told me I had to go back. And just like here in Alice in Wonderland, exactly like that, they sent me back. Everything faded around and I dropped away. Somebody sent me this years ago. I highly recommend watching this movie. It's about a guy in Brazil who is a medium, and it's called Astral City. And it clearly shows that there's a heaven, a earth, an other place, an in-between place, like a rehab, like a facility. And you can see it in these pictures, that there's this beautiful city where you learn all these things, and what we call heaven or upper astral, I think. And then there's this rehab place where we heal, emotional healing. And then there's this other thing, and these divine beings pop in, beings that have gone beyond heaven, Robert Monroe talks about it, this incredibly expansive place after heaven, um, where nothing's impossible, and that's where we're headed. So, Astral City is a beautiful city, and in Heather's NDE, she talks about going to the Crystal City. You could see her energy just light up when she talks about it. And Adela, the medium from LA, she told me that I was in a rehab place, a medical facility like place. And once you left that place, you could go out into this Crystal City. And she said there was all kinds of things to learn, and it was a beautiful, beautiful place. If you watch John Davis's NDE, he's amazing. Tells the same fantastic story hundreds of times. Obviously, he's doing the work that he was told to do. He's not a businessman. He's not looking for attention. He's he's doing divine work. He's a good guy. And he talks about this heavenly marble city where all these places of learning, and he got a tour of it. And one of the places they took him was the planetarium, and they put a show on for him where he could see the planets that we're familiar with, our solar system. And then they brought up the planets that we can't see. And he said there were billions of planets. And the thing about planet, that word, it has plane in it. Edgar Casey always said the Earth plane. A plane is a realm, a dimension, um, a place, not necessarily a spinning ball. Um, and David Oakford, when he had his NDE, he flew around with his guide and on the planets that he saw civilizations, people, and he asked him, why can't we see all this from Earth? And his guide said, well, you're in a body. A human body is, can't see but a fraction of what's there. It's by design. We can't really see the expanded realm around us until we earn it, till we move on. And that's sort of, the whole Star Trek thing. There's the Star Trek ship flying through the Pleiades, of all things. Talked about the Pleiades earlier. And, once we move on from our being a man, go where no man has gone before. Buddha means no man, not of man. Um, our understanding goes beyond the human labels, the human ability, and we're past ego and individual self, and we're awakened. And absolutely believe that Star Trek is sort of a on-screen lessons. All those episodes were lessons in thoughts, controlling our thoughts, our emotions, and moving through endless galaxies. So I talked a little bit about this that there are royal guardians, and I think that's what John Davis encountered. He was in a giant library where all these ancient royal families were honored. They had books and statues and paintings of them, and he didn't understand it. But I think that it has to do with, you have to be born into this realm in order to operate here. They can't, the other side can't interfere. That's like the prime directive. And you can't mess around with a developing culture, and you can't mess around with a developing person. They have to make it on their own. And I think somebody has to be here to make sure everybody's script gets played out, that world events go in a certain direction. And, we all kind of notice that there's some controllers, elites, bankers, um, kind of pulling the strings. And I think that's what it's about. And I think that these royal families are celebrated in the afterlife as um, great souls. So we talked a little bit about the Crystal City, that leads me to the Emerald City. The Wizard of Oz. There's a lot in that movie. And the Emerald Tablets goes back to ancient Egypt and Thoth and beyond. In the Emerald Tablets, the myth is that you can touch on a certain subject and information through that crystal tablet is automatically downloaded into you, knowledge. And on Vinny's NDE, he talks about being with these crystal tablets where you could get information from them just by touching them, and you could travel through time across the galaxy with crystals. The Wizard of Oz is a couple of years ago. This sort of came to me spontaneously that um, the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's deal was just like mine. Dorothy had an NDE. She's in a drab place with black and white and mean people, and suddenly there's the twister, and she gets in the house, and the window hits her in the head. She separates from her body, and after that part, where the window comes off and hits her, um, she is in an NDE. And then when she lands, she opens the door, and there's nothing but colors, giant flowers. You hear NDEs talk about giant flowers and giant butterflies and things like that. And there's music on the air flowing. There's water flowing through this little munchkin town. And Glinda shows up in a beautiful orb. This is what I saw, orbs, stars. And Glinda is Dorothy's higher self. Dorothy's name means gift from God. This life on earth is a gift from God. That's what we all have going. And and then these funny little mischievous dudes come forward and they meet Dorothy and they're friendly and they all got a little sass to them. And that's exactly what I experienced. Three little munchkins um, and my three little hooded guys. And Glinda gets Dorothy on the road, on the Yellow Brick Road, on her journey, on the hero's journey that we're all on. And Dorothy meets a scarecrow looking for a brain, a tin man looking for a heart, and a scarecrow looking for courage. And if you go back to the beginning of this story I've been telling, you know, the scarecrow is looking for a brain. And when we get control of our thoughts and we go with that right brain that's connected to the divine, and we make decisions based on the intelligence of the heart, the Tin Man, and we proceed with courage without fear, and then we can complete our journey and we can go home. And there's no place like home. And I've told that for a while. I think it's time to expand. And in Bill Tortorella's NDE, he is with three spirits. They show him the past, the present, the future, things that could happen, things that did happen. And he is, that's the same story that's in A Christmas Carol with Scrooge. Scrooge is in an NDE and he's going through a life review over and over. And It's a Wonderful Life. It's the same thing. There's an NDE and he sees his life, what could be, what should be. Um, it's a Wonderful Life. That is an NDE with a life review. These NDE people, they're so important. I think this is why they're telling us who we really are. And A Christmas Carol, just to take it even further, A Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life is shown to us. We all gather around our TVs um, since the 50s. I remember this every year. Uh, and right around the winter solstice, this is ancient intelligence, ancient knowledge. Um, we all see these things around the winter solstice. These are powerful times. And the Wizard of Oz came to us uh, in late September. the fall equinox, special times. We all gathered around our TV. It was a big event in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and we all watched The Wizard of Oz every year. It was the highlight of the year. And Alice in Wonderland, Alice, it starts off with this ridiculous thing of a rabbit checking out a clock. There's no time, there's no space, there's no size, there's no distance. The universe is a mental landscape. Thoughts are things. When Alice goes down the rabbit hole, she gets small, she gets huge. All these things happen. And in Penny's NDE, suddenly she found herself in the backseat of her sister's car, hundreds of miles away, as soon as she crossed over. Um, so there's no distance, there's no space. And Elizabeth was struck by lightning. She was laying in the parking lot for 2 minutes, but in her NDE, she was gone for 2 or 3 weeks. She actually said she could watch the sun rise and set, and she was there getting information from relatives in a park-like setting for weeks. And when Louisa had her NDE, she ended up eventually at her ancestors' seaside home, and she was a little speck of light, and she was crawling across the floor, and she could see all the detail in the floor because she was a little tiny speck of light. So Alice in Wonderland is telling us about who we really are, that all is mind. The universe is a mental landscape. Darius Wright tells us we're in a construct, which fits with the reports from Edgar Cayce of moving through these levels, stairways, and this mentalism, this thoughts are things. You look up the definition of a construct. This is getting real heady for the big thinkers out there. But a construct is a mental image, an idea, or a theory created by the mind. It's a tool to explore themes, build arguments, understand theologies, social circumstances, histories. This is probably the most important slide anybody could ever see and get their head around, because it tells us that we come into these many lives, themes, themes like abandonment or themes like jealousy or revenge, and understanding social circumstances like society getting ready to go to war. And we actually live these many, many lives in these ideologies. Incredible understanding for us. And Sarah L. Caldy, the alchemist, she has a YouTube page, and most of the videos are way over my head, but she does talk about our many lives and that we come here and we are exploring themes to learn spiritual knowledge. It's pretty cool. And this construct thing hit home for me because what I had this experience with it in a dream a couple days after my dad died years ago. I found myself in this underground place. It was like a giant cave. It was like miles to the ceiling, huge indoor ocean that went out vast waters. And there were people there. I was on a beach, people there helping me. I was supposed to go out to this island to meet my dad. He couldn't come to where I was, but I could go out to this island that was shrouded in fog and mist. And they helped me get a boat, and it was cool. I'm like, yeah, thanks very much. And I went across this water and I saw him, and he was young and happy and full of joy, and it was a trip. Um, and we talk about the Earth is a ball spinning in space, and others talk that it's a flat Earth. And this construct, it accommodates everybody, and I think that's the way to go forward, with unity. And also, this is This is ancient intelligence. This is what the ancients all said the same thing. And Byron, he has his NDE. He said he's a really cool guy, obviously very genuine, um, trying to help others with his story, very sincere, hardworking guy. And he said as soon as he died, he found himself in a cave. He could look at the walls. He was in a cave, an underground cave. This is, there's a lot of this, of the waters of the afterlife in Plato's work, Phaedo. There are these waters that we have to cross after this life. The Egyptians had the afterlife boat, the river Styx. I think this is closer to what goes on after we leave. It's not hell, it's an afterlife realm. Um, I didn't feel like I was in a hellish place at all. It's just very different. And this construct thing in my dreams, when I go to bed at night, I don't sleep. I'm out, I'm off somewhere, I'm doing things, and usually in nature, the ocean a lot of times. And I'll notice I'll be with friends, will be some project. I don't know what we're doing, but I'll look down the coastline and I'll see the coastline bending up around us, and I can see waves breaking in these um, ridiculous positions. And I'll say, how can this be running the way it is? You know, it it doesn't fit anything I know. And in this movie Inception, they show that the world bends around, things change. Um, that movie is really good, Inception. And there's a plot to it where they're trying to get something accomplished, and Leonardo DiCaprio keeps messing up their mission because he's carrying all this negative feelings about his wife. So you can't take those negative vibes into that world. It collapses it, and that's shown in that movie. So I praise Mary Neal every chance I get. She's the best. The coolest thing I ever heard her say, and it helped me a lot. She said that when she died in Chile, when she drowned, she said she found herself out of her body with these people, these spirits, these somethings. And that was the crack, the crease that I needed when she said these somethings, because my NDE is crazy enough, but like I said, when I go to bed, I'm off to other places with others, very strange looking others. And Vinny tells us that any form of life, any combination of forms of life you can possibly imagine already exists. You hear this over and over with ancient knowledge also. And years ago, I was going to go to a conference and I started stretching the limits. I started talking about things other than my NDE because I figured it was more important. And it's kind of getting it out there, pushing the envelope. And I got my story all straight, my slides all right. And I went outside to go to bed, and I sleep outside. And I'm sitting there looking at the sky going, yeah, this will work. I think I can pull it off. And all of a sudden, based on that intention, I'm sure of it, um, the sky opened up and there was this incredible woman. She was made of gold. She was gold. She was perfect. She was sensual. She was animated. She was looking right at me. She had these wings and she was really excited. And her mouth was moving, but all I heard was this roaring, this rumbling, roaring. Everything was shaking, out of control, shaking. Um, she was really excited. She was pointing behind her, like gesturing towards the stars. I took that as a good sign. And I just looked her in the eye and I said, I'm not going to blow this. Whatever she's trying to tell me, I couldn't understand her words, but I could see in her eyes, and she was absolutely stoked. Um, so I think this is something others are going to see. This revelations thing, it's not playing around. I think people are going to see things like this in the sky, um, and it's going to be in the news. And we can give it all kinds of names. I said ISIS for a long time, but with the new Gnostic texts, the Gnostic Gospels that came out of Nag Hammadi, this Sophia, this ancient deity, sacred feminine, Mary Magdalene, all of these things combine into super beings, I think. And I think we've been shown for a long time what's really out there. And it's been very helpful, I think. I think the Masked Singer is closer to accurate. The pictures that come out of the mask, these characters that they make, I think they're showing us incredible variation. Nothing's impossible. This is what, when I go to bed at night, this is what I see. Hanging out with these guys are always cool. It's always fun. And Venia visited a water world where she saw giant octopuses and all kinds of things. She loved it there, felt so alive.
Jesus showed me a parade of people and were looking at me and Jesus and smiling and waving and speaking to us. But of course, I didn't understand them because I didn't know their language. But and it began with people that looked just like us, human beings. Okay. And very quickly, there would be little differences, like they would have bigger ears, or they would be like green or purple or whatever, different colors and stuff. I could deal with that. Okay, the fact that they were a little different, I was comfortable with. And then they started to get a little more different and not looking so much like us. And I was trying emotionally to adjust to that. Like, okay, they're weird, but they're still intelligent beings and they're still friendly. They're not going to hurt me or anything. Well, they would have more limbs, or they would have antennae, or their eyes would be outside of their head, like on, things like that. And then they started to get weirder. And the only way I can describe it, if you've seen pictures of sea creatures that they find in the very depths of the ocean that are really strange looking, well, then they started getting really strange looking. And I said to Jesus, I'm not comfortable with this. I've seen enough. He said, okay, and it stopped just like that. It was over. Because now they were more like octopuses and insects and things than they were human. These were intelligent beings, but they were not in any way human like.
So that's Howard Storm. He's my hero. He's the greatest. He pushes the envelope. And these guys, YouTube channel, Off the Left Eye, they're bringing the work of Swedenborg from the 1700s, and they're connecting it to the Bible, and they're going to help millions connect with who we really are. And Darius Wright is doing amazing work. He's helping people leave their body and to get past the fear, because fear is what holds us here. So I think one of the best things with this non-physical beings, one of the best sources, if you want to get right down to it, is DMT, the Spirit Molecule by Rick Strausman, chapters 12, 13, and 14, where he doesn't pull any punches. It's very professional, very clinical, but he also brings forward that his volunteers were seeing non-human presences. They were seeing aliens, angels, spirits. He also felt that the alien abduction experience was also a product of this DMT, the act of the pineal gland. Pretty good stuff. And when we talk about celestial beings, the Anunnaki, they stand in a category by themselves. They They were the earliest to show up. They were considered by the Sumerians to be creators, celestial beings. Um, they controlled our destinies. Anunnaki means shiny, and they show up everywhere. They're in the Bible, they're in the Book of Jubilee, ancient writings. They have a chief. Um, An was the chief god of sun and sky. An was the chief god of sun and sky, and it literally meant the shining one. The Anunnaki, according to this, were known as the sons of the shining one or the sons of light. And the Sumerians, you see, the man bag shows up. That man bag shows up 10,000 years earlier. Uh, Göbekli Tepe, which is a new something that just showed up a few within the last decade or two. And also you see the man bag, and what the man bag indicates, I believe, is advanced information. The Sumerians invented all this stuff, writing, and they brought in poetry, mathematics. They were hunter-gatherers, and all of a sudden they had all of this knowledge, advanced knowledge. Um, so somebody brings information into this world and, you know, moves us along. And we're on this we're on this voyage to know thyself, to really know thyself, away from um, stories. And this remembering, I keep going back to that. Remembering is a big part of this. In DMT, the spirit molecule, uh, his volunteers, Straussman's volunteers, when they would be running out of DMT, they'd be starting to lose its power, and they'd have to leave these entities, these um, elves. They would say, don't forget us. See you soon. You know, this remembering thing. My guys, the guys I saw, they said he doesn't remember us. It was the key exchange. They thought that was hilarious. And Terrence McKenna, when his DMT would wear off and he would be pulled away from that scene, they would all gather and they would sing deja vu. And they'd, as he left, you know, that's reference to remembering who we are. When we start to seek, when we genuinely go seek, not join a cult or a religion or follow a guru, those days are over. You have to genuinely seek yourself. This is what the other side wants, and it's going to become very obvious that we need to ask and will be answered. Knock and the door will open. Seek, you'll find. You have to go inward. You have to mean it. That's what I did. I didn't plan it. I just felt, what is going on here? How can Straussman's volunteers have the same experience I had? I was really perplexed. I wanted to find answers. I wasn't overly driven, but I was still looking, and it got somebody's attention, I think. And it gets their attention, and the door will open. You'll see some incredible things. We'll talk about those in my next, in part 5. Um, you'll experience incredible things. And then what this is throughout religion, uh, is genuinely, wholeheartedly, gratefully commit uh, to them. And that's what I said. You know, I saw all these things, and then I said, man, thank you for all of this. My schedule is free. Whatever you need from me, I'm your man. Let me know. I'll pay attention. And I meant it. And that was over 10 years ago, and I still mean it today, that, you know, this thing about our divine nature, it's not a feel-good part-time story. It's what we are, it's who we are. Uh, it's coming into the mainstream. It's going to be headlined soon. And it's an easy formula. Ask and you'll find. And then when the door opens, um, gratefully commit and be thankful and get on board. And I don't know, I think that's the way to go. So we'll have another part 5, and it'll be more of this meat stuff. It'll be my crazy stories of what happened to me. And then I'll have one last short one, and it's time to become. And that'll be, become all that you can be. The time is now. It's the door is open for everybody. We'll talk about that. Okay, thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next one.